So that's similar to what you're saying in a sense, like the read is correct.
I mean, one thing that I learned, my biggest takeaway from this show, I have to say, is
all right, everybody, welcome to the final Game of Gold recap episode. This is it. We've come to the end. We're going to talk about episode 12, the extended episode, almost 2 hours, when all of them had been an hour up until this point. So this podcast might go a little bit longer than some of the past ones because we've got so much to talk about, so much to get to. We've got the entire final table of 6, play down to a winner, unlike, under the... we watch a final table in a sit and go on TV. This is winner take all. There's no second prize. There's no third prize. And we'll talk about that. But first off, thoughts on the format here when we get to the final table, all the big blinds, the different stuff. Terrence, are you ready for a fun final table here? Or were you ready for it?
Oh, absolutely. And so deep. I mean, how often do you get a final table where, I don't know what the average stack is here, but it's like pushing 200, Maria with 260 blinds and Josh with 220 and Johan with 200. It's a super deep final table. I was like, let's see some poker. And, I'm the kind of guy I've always said, like, watching Jungleman on Hold'em on TV doesn't excite me. But now I'm emotionally invested in this. And, we saw the episode. It was pretty much all poker with just some interviews. But I think it's good. This one is for the hardcores, but even for the casuals who don't want to talk about the minutiae of blockers and solvers. We're invested in these people now, and that's why we're going to do a lot of poker.
Yeah, no question. I think like part of what made poker cool on TV way back when was some background on the players. Myself, for example, having my mother make lunch. You go, oh, he's the mama's boy. And then, you had Chris Ferguson, they called the Jesus, and they sort of allowed opportunity to create characters. And this show does that. So it's not like, oh, whatever, a final table of 6 people. But we know these people. We know what they've gone through to get here. We've got the underdogs. We got the favorites. We've got the storylines. And at this point, it's an opportunity to just let the poker speak for itself. The drama of the game that we all love.
You mentioned it, Terrence. Ross, throw up the final table graphic here with the starting big blinds because it is interesting. We've got, so left to right, we've got Jungle with 109, Josh with 220, Fedor has 195, Kyna 81, Johan 239, and Maria 261. She starts off with the chip lead, and Kyna obviously on the short stack here. But after winning half of David Williams' coins, she's got 81 big blinds. Remember, she started that round with 26 big blinds, I believe. So now she's got more than enough to maneuver through here. If she picks up some hands and some key spots, tough table for her, obviously. These are wizards all the way through. But at least she's not in shove mode right away, which is good. And the other cool aspect of the final table is they use the GG poker method of picking your seat at the final table. Kyna with the least amount, she goes first and she picks her seat. And Maria gets to strategically place herself in what seems to be the best seat at the table. So first off, Jungle sits with Kyna on his left, which was an interesting choice there. Fedor squeezes in between them, taking position on Jungle. Then we see Josh squeeze in between those two monsters, having position on Jungle, but having Fedor to his direct left, which I also thought was interesting. Johan takes a different approach. We saw others all fine with Kyna on their left, but Johan thinks it's best to have direct position on her, and you'll see why during the episode, what he planned to do in that spot. Maria with the last choice takes a huge page out of Johan's book here and sits on his left, choosing to put herself in a spot with Jungle on her left. Maybe not ideal because she's got the two crusher, Fedor and Jungle behind her. But thoughts on the seat choices here and the format, Terrence?
Yeah, I thought Maria's choice was very clear just because Johan is second in chips. I don't think it's like, oh, I want Jungle on my left. Nobody wants Jungle on your left. But the fact of the matter is this, you've got the one person that you cover who's super deep. You want position on that person. It's super important. I thought Fedor's decision was clear. Johan, you mentioned wanting to isolate Kyna. Josh is the decision that I don't understand. Like, why would you put yourself, out of position against Fedor in that spot? That's the real head scratcher to me, that choice. But I thought Maria's decision was straightforward, and Fedor's decision, and Jungle didn't have too much choice in the matter.
Daniel, if you're Maria, are you picking the seat she picked?
Well, I was going to get to something completely different, but like, well, okay, for Maria, I didn't even really think about that. What for me was really interesting about, sort of the dynamic was it feels as though, the group sort of pegs it, that she was chosen last, kind of was, right? So, they sort of maybe see her as the weakest link, and she's also on the shorter stack. So for me, the interesting aspect was like, do you want that player on your left or your right? And we saw two schools of thought here, right? Viral coming with the approach of like, no, I'm going to play pots in position with her, where the others may be feeling like, I don't really mind her on my left. I'd rather have her on my left than a jungle or a Fedor who might put me in some more difficult spots. So that's sort of the interesting dilemma for me in terms of how you not only chip stacks, like you said, she sits right, Maria sits right on Viral's left, but I don't know if that's the best seat necessarily because of the fact that you're going to, when you're the button, you're going to have jungle and Fedor to fight, in those spots. So that's what's really cool about it. It adds this additional strategic element where, okay, you get to go and like Josh's pick. I don't know, maybe he was trying to hide in between the two, right? Because he knows, listen, Josh knows he's not going to get perfect position. Wherever he sits or somebody else that's going to pick, and choose, and Maria's going to pick the best seat. So I don't know. For me, the whole thing revolved around people's perception of Kyna and how to sit in relation to sort of target her and attack her chips.
All right, so let's talk about the final table attire. Fedor, Kyna, Viral all dressed in their typical attire, but Josh really steps it up. He's got a suit with the handkerchief. Looks like he's going to a nice dinner. I don't think I've ever seen him pull that off because he's always in sort of a tracksuit, and he also has the Euro scarf wrapped around his neck, which was good. Maria looking classy as always. She's got the gold suit jacket on, and then of course we have Jungleman, or should I say Danny McFanny, the leprechaun chasing his pot of gold. He's in full character as he tends to do, accent everything throughout the entire final table. Thoughts on these choices, guys?
I mean, obviously we're here for the characters. I feel like Jungle owes the entire country of Ireland like a big apology for that accent.
Yeah,
I know, obviously great. Everyone looked awesome, and everybody was in character. Props to the makeup and costume team. I got nothing to say. They were all them. They were all them.
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest surprise for me was Josh, suiting it up like that. It reminded me of many, many years ago. If you guys remember the outdoor final table when Stu Unger won in 1998, I believe, 7, pardon me. Yeah. And then you had Ron Stanley in a tuxedo, like really showing homage to the event. It seems like Josh elevated his wardrobe for there. And Jungle, Jungle's going to come with something hot. Jungle's always in some sort of costume, and a lot of people were like sort of debating at the table, like, where did you find this suit? Like, you packed the green, and he's like, I just manifested it. He was in full character, as you said. Jungle seems like a guy who makes a concerted effort to try to be entertaining, right? Like, he creates these characters, and I think he thinks about it. Like, his brain is really unique, as we heard in the interview with him in terms of how he sees things and breaks it down. Like, he's thinking of like the analytics behind it, if you will, and like he's like, well, no, we got to be like wrestling, and I'll take on a character each and every time I'm on TV, and it'll be a different one.
And it's making fun of himself too. Like when Phil Hellmuth shows up at the World Series of Poker, it's like, I'm the Roman Emperor, stand before me. Like Jungle's like Macho Man and funny leprechaun chasing pot of gold. He's just poking fun at himself. He's not taking it too seriously, which I love.
Yeah. All right. So this episode, understandably, it's all about the poker. There's no backroom commentary, just the music, the poker, some side interviews interlaced throughout the show after big hands or bust outs. It seems like a bit of a risk here, so heavily on the poker with no commentary. We don't have anybody, talking about the hands or anything. It's just the players. And what did you guys kind of make of that? Of it just being basically poker for an hour and 45 minutes.
But we had commentary. I beg to differ, Mr. Schwartz, because we have Fedor on the river going over every combination of hand that Maria is going to call 25 big blinds pre and take this line. We had plenty of commentary, and that's what I wanted. I mean, actually, that's the worst thing when I watch poker on TV and the commentators are talking over the players who are saying something interesting. That's the worst. So, like, hey, we brought 6 fun personalities to this final table, and it didn't matter which 6 made the final table. It was going to be 6 fun either way. Let's let the poker shine. Let's let these guys be the stars of the show.
Yeah, it was certainly a risk, right? Because like the entire show was about the drama. It was about the back room. That's kind of what was unique. And now we're really putting all our eggs in a basket saying, like, is poker enough? Is it interesting enough? And I got to say, I think without the lead up, if this was just a final table of 6 people and that was the beginning of it, and you just watch it and you're like, wow, seems like they could do a little more with this. But because of the lead up, the drama's already there. The storylines have already been sort of created. And you bring up a good point, Terrence. Like, there is commentary in the sense that they're capturing all the things people say. The worst thing you can do as a poker commentator, the worst thing you can do is think that what you have to say is more important than what the players are saying at the table. Now, that becomes difficult if you watch live streams because, it's a 7-8 hour stream and sometimes people are chit-chatting about nothing. But when you have edited shows like this, it allows you to really sort of parse, the table talk. And we got to hear it. I thought probably one of the most fascinating hands, which we'll get to, was the one where Fedor spends 3 minutes giving a masterclass on how to break down a hand in real time, when he's facing a tough spot against Maria.
All right, so let's get to some of those hands. And the first one really shocked me, if I'm honest. And we're watching some of these great players play these hands, and when they do something that just makes you go like this, it's not like, oh, fuck, that's terrible in real time. It's like, okay, he's one of the best in the world. Why did he do that? And I need to understand it. So Maria, she opens with King 10 off. Fedor calls on the button with the 5-6 of diamonds, and Joviral defends the big blind with Ace-Jack offsuit. The flop is King Queen 9 with 2 diamonds. So big flop. Joviral does some Joviral things here, and he leads really small. He min bets 30,000 into 250,000. I can't imagine this is a thing in Solverland, but Joviral, more of a live cash game player. But I just have no idea what he's doing with that bet. Maria and Fedor both call. Turn is the juiciest card you're ever going to find. It's the 10 of diamonds, rolls off. So Joviral turns the nut straight. Maria makes 2 pair with King 10. And she also has a King high straight flush draw, while Fedor just made a 6 high flush. Joviral goes big now. He bets 270 into 340,000, and Maria calls, which makes sense. She's 2 pair, and the nut straight. Well, no, sorry, not the nut flush draw, the straight flush draw. But the king had diamonds. Now Fedor, it's on Fedor on the river, and I'm thinking, oh, this is an incredible spot. Joviral's might go bust here because he's got the straight when Fedor has a flush, and he just folds. And I was just, okay, the best player in the world, or one of them, just folded in a spot I could never fold. And what the heck? What's going on here, guys?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Like, if this is not Fedor Holz, I think he gets eviscerated by the public on this one. And I was shocked too. I thought when he's in the tank, I thought it was between calling and raising. And I thought raising seems like a little too thin, but maybe he wants to protect and he knows that there's a bigger flush draw out there because you've got a 6 high flush. I thought that's what he was processing is maybe should I raise? No, I should just call. And then he puts it in the muck and I was just jaw on the floor for that one. So yeah, I mean, 3-way pots are a hard thing to, there's no solvers for 3. I mean, maybe there are, but it's not a situation that a lot of people understand and experience really well. And so Fedor's got to rely on his instincts here. His instincts said that I'm going to beat a good chunk of the time, or maybe I'm going to get, or if I'm not beat, they have so much equity that I'm not really a big favorite anyway.
It's funny you say that because I remember watching the hand and not really thinking deeply about it and just saying oh, flush. So I wonder if he's going to call a raise here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And then I looked and I was like, I actually rewound it. I'm like, wait a minute. Is the board? Did I get the board wrong or something like that? And he folds the flush. I think he does a good job in the moment of sort of at this point, not even knowing, whether it was a good later or not. He's incredibly confident that it's a good fold, right? And, he gives his explanation. And, when we speak to him, we'll dig deeper into why he does that. But it just goes to show you, at the highest levels, everyone has a guy like Fedor, and you think aggression, aggression, aggression. So they think that must mean that he goes bonkers when he has good hands too. But it's there's more to being a great poker player than that. It's not simply about just unbridled aggression when you have something and getting trapped. It's about also finding spots where your opponents are perceived to be under bluffing and when they have incredibly strong ranges. He feels like when Maria calls flop and raise under the and calls turn, what is that hand, right? So Maria has at least a straight, maybe flush, 2 pairs. And, like you said, there's some spots where even if you're good now, a board pair or another diamond, you lose there too. So are you really wanting to raise here? Probably too thin, like you said. So just interesting to see, because for me, what was shocking is how quickly he just was nah, never mind, out. So he was committed to his decision, and results or whatever. He just in that moment felt like it was a strong fold. And listen, here's the thing: even though he had the best hand, guys, doesn't mean he's wrong. Because in theory, you're in this one case he happened to be ahead, but more often than not, he probably isn't.
All right, so that leaves Yovairil again with the nut straight and Maria with 2 pair in the draw. The river comes and it pairs the 10, and Maria wins this pot with a river raise after a patented Yovairil min bet of 30,000 into 880,000. Fedor escapes. The fold ends up being in results-orientated land. It ends up being good. His flush would have lost on the river to Maria's full house. I don't know. I wonder if he can find a raise on the turn. Does Maria call with her hand on that board? Who knows what happens in another dimension where he does raise the turn. The next hand of interest is between Kyna and Yovairil. Yovairil took position on her at the start of this hand, and this is why, as he 3-bets her pre-flop in position with ace-7 off, and Kyna calls with the ace-9 of hearts. Kyna check calls a continuation bet by Yovairil on the queen-jack-5 board with backdoor straights, backdoor flush draws, and still ace-high. That could still be good. The turn is now the 7. Yovairil hits his 3-outer, and it goes check. River's another queen, brings backdoor diamonds, and Kyna goes for the bluff, and she bets kind of small. She bets 230,000 into 550. Kyna bets kind of small. Yovairil, he goes into the tank, and he's just staring at her from like a foot away. He's just like straight staring at her, making her feel. I mean, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that is when she's bluffing, and he's just staring at her. And then he looks down at her feet, and he looks down at her legs, and he makes the call. And I mean, is this a foot tapping tell? Is this some sort of tell she's given away in her face, or she's uncomfortable, or what? Terrence, what did you think of that?
I think he's probably calling regardless. I mean, I'm sure he was looking for a read. Whether he got one or not is, that's up to your interpretation. I didn't feel like Kyna looked particularly bluffy. I think from a strategy standpoint, she has a few options. She can just check, give up. I mean, ace high sometimes wins, right? If they don't bluff the straight draw or whatever. If she can go small, which she did, repping the jack. I think more commonly people go big, repping the queen there because she can have queens. She can have lots of queens. Yovairil for his part unblocks a lot of the bluffs, a lot of the straight draw stuff. So I think he was always calling there. I don't think that it, if you could be teleported into his mind in that moment, I don't think whether Kyna's moving her legs or not was a massive factor, my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I will say one thing. I will give Kyna credit. I kind of like, even though it was kind of small, I kind of like the size in this position. So that way you can represent a whole bunch more value, like you said, like a thin jack, like king jack, ace jack. If you go big here, you're saying flush, queen, or full house. But here, if she feels like Yovairil might have something just like ace 10 or something, or like the 7 that he did hit, he can maybe fold that. So I kind of liked her size. Now, as for Yovairil, he took almost the first minute, and he looked uncertain. Then he gives it the old, look underneath, sees some toe tap, and comes back and goes, yeah, he makes the call. I think you're right, Terrence. He probably calls anyway, but I don't know if he caught something there. It certainly looked like, though, after he looked at her feet, that he was more certain in what he wanted to do.
Well, it's always information for the future, right? Even if you don't pick up something in that moment, if you're gonna call anyway, you're gonna get the information. So you might as well just sort of process that for next hand.
It's funny, actually. Jungle takes a pot away from Yo in the next hand and makes a joke about 3-betting his last Kyna with the air. Basically, he gave him a hard time. It was funny. And Kyna doesn't have to wait too long for revenge as she doubles through Yovairil. And is back in it when Yovairil tries to bluff her off the nuts in a blind versus blind battle. And interesting, Yo called her open in the big blind with 10-3 off. So it's safe to say here his range is 100% of hands. If he's dealt 2 cards, he's basically calling her raise in this spot. And then Josh, right? I mean, he just ran terribly at this final table. I'm not sure I believe he's as lucky as he says he is, but the first he runs ace queen into Kyna's king, which he somehow gets away from pre-flop, and then we see him get straight coolered running ace king into Fedor's aces. He loses the pot, and he's flops a king, by the way, and he doesn't get there. So there was a little bit of drama on the flop. He's still in it. He's down to 20 big blinds. Jungle goes on to bust him when he flops top pair, and it comes runner flush for Jungle. Josh leaves the arena and gives the table the double bird. Fuck you guys in Josh's playful manner, which was amusing. The next big hand is another 3-way pot.
None of those today.
He didn't give it that one because he didn't win. That's when you win. You give it that.
Yeah.
This is when you lose.
Yeah.
Next big hand, three-way pot. Fedor now is the chip leader, but finds himself in a really tough spot. This was the hand of the final table for me. Fascinating hand to watch. Even though that other hand was really interesting, this changed everything. Fedor opens with queens. Kyna shoves the short stack with ace-4 suited. And Maria, who also sits on a big stack, elects to just call pre with ace-king. Fedor has a decision here, but he chooses to play it safe and see a flop, just calling the shove by Kyna, worried that maybe Maria's calling range here is super strong, and she might just be trapping with aces or kings. The flop is banana lands. It's queen, jack, 8, all diamonds. Top set for Fedor, a gut shot with the nut flush draw for Maria. She's got the ace of diamonds. Fedor goes small here on the flop, and Maria calls. He goes small again, less than a quarter pot on the turn, giving Maria a great price, and she calls. And the river is a 10, giving Maria the nut straight. So there's 8.7 million in the pot, and Maria leads for 1.8 million. It's a big bet in actual chip sizes, but small in relation to the pot, giving Fedor like 5-1 odds on calling here with top set. And this is, we talked about it earlier, how Fedor, this was a masterclass. He puts him in the blender, and he's tanking hard. I think he used 6 gold coins here on time extensions. And then he starts going through the possibilities out loud instead of in his head, which he would normally do. But he realizes this is for television. This is for entertainment. And he's like, okay, pocket jacks, pocket 10s, you're not bluffing. Ace jack off, you don't call pre. Ace jack suited, you fold turn. Ace queen, only one combo with the ace of diamonds. You would be bluffing there. And he goes on, talks about it, and then he goes, there's almost no value. And, he throws a chip in, and he gets to see the bad news that he got rivered. But thoughts on this, guys? Fascinating from beginning to end of this hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get to the river, I did want to talk about Kyna's pre-flop shove. Now, you see her in the exit interview talking about, I punted, and you see her getting a little emotional. I do not think that this was a punt. Like,
Seconded.
You do?
No, I said second.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. It's like 20-ish bigs. I don't remember exactly. You're in a super tough, you're in a tournament against super tough players. It's a suited ace, always has equity, like winner take all. Sure, if you're playing it's not, so there's no ICM involved. You're just trying to win chips. Like if you're playing like a $500 tournament in Hammond, Indiana against a guy who owns a car dealership or something, then it's a punt. Maybe, but you're playing Fedor Holz, you're playing Maria Ho, you're playing Jungleman. Like that's a spot.
It's like not a punt. It's optimal.
Yeah,
it is it's best pitch. So it's part of what it takes, like being sort of on the newer side of like being results oriented. Like, oh shit, I punted. You only punted because he had queens and she turned. She had. If they just would have folded, you wouldn't even thought about the idea that you punted.
Yeah, like whatever. Like Fedor just has king 10 and you mucks and you pick up a bunch of chips. Great. Like you just ran into a cooler situation. And so I know a lot of our guests have mentioned that they listen to this podcast, which is great. So kind of if you're out there, you did good, girl. Don't beat yourself up over this one. River, yeah. I mean, you guys mentioned it already. Masterclass by Fedor. It's just a pleasure to watch him talk through the hands. Yeah, Adam, you mentioned you thought it was because of TV. I think he would have done that anyway. I think he would have. He's closing action. There's nothing else happening. He knows as soon as Maria makes this bet, he's got all the gold coins in front of him. Maybe like, I'm going to be a while here, boys and girls. Like, I'm sorry, but he uses some of them 2 at a time because he just doesn't want to be distracted by having to flick in the extra coins. He knows. What I really love about this hand, aside from that, is Maria's sizing. I thought this was just fantastic sizing for Maria because she realizes that it's hard for her to have bluffs in this situation. And it's so tempting for her, given the SPR, to just chip it in and just be like, I'm nutted. Suck it, Fedor. Like, give me all your chips. And so tempting to just get rid of maybe your toughest opponent and doesn't get greedy. Goes for that really small sizing. And as Fedor's going through this, he can barely find any bluffs himself, but he's getting 5-1. He only needs to find one bluff for every 5 value hands that Maria can have. And I just loved Maria's sizing here and getting what I thought was absolute max value here. So, while we talk about Fedor's great commentary here, also props to Maria for choosing the sizing that gets her paid off, because like, what else is she supposed to have when she calls 20 plus big blinds cold calling out of the blinds, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, watching Fedor, you rarely see Fedor like emotionally invested the way in which he was, right? Fedor's a guy who's got a cool, calm, and he's a cool cucumber at the table. When she made that bet, he just was, you could see his demeanor. He was like out of sorts because he knew this was such an annoying spot, and the sizing is super annoying because, like you said, Terrence, he gets 5-1. One of the things I thought about, in terms of one of the hands that he said she could have, which is the ace queen. That, check calls, maybe now thinks it doesn't have showdown value and puts in a small bluff. That's like the only one really. And I just don't think she's doing that that often. I think a lot of the time she's going to hope that she's up against king queen or ace queen. She's got some showdown value against both those hands. Right. And I just don't think, frankly, based on what we saw of Maria in these big, huge spots, what did she do mostly? Well, she took the passive line. This is a big spot where there's an all-in player, right? So it's like you're gonna have to show this hand as well. She just doesn't really have a lot of bluffs. I get where Fedor's brain is breaking here because like you're getting 5-1. If you like ever get bluffed here, it's such a huge mistake. But I think in his range assessment of Maria, I don't know that I don't think she's blocking here with. I mean, what, does she make 3 10s maybe? Like, I don't know, man. Does she call the third? It's like 10s with the 10 of diamonds. Yeah, there's a couple. And I guess that's probably ultimately what makes it a really close decision. And I trust, Fedor's breakdown of the hand more than I would my own because he was there and he was in it. But obviously we see the cards. And to me, I'm like, man, you got to lay this down. She's not bluffing here, bro.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Kyna, Terrence, because she had to sit there through that entire hand with no pair, no draw. Obviously, that these two have giant hands, and I'm going home. But I can't just stand up or flick my cards in or anything. She's got to sit there, just kind of tortured. And then, as you mentioned, she talks about in her exit interview about punting, and she says something like, "I always punt in big spots like that," or something. And yeah, like the guy said, I don't think she did here, and kind of wears her heart on her sleeve, which makes her so relatable, so likable, and I hope that she's considered for season 2 if and when there is one. And the other issue there is she gets up, and because it's such a huge pot, everybody's like mind's blown. Everybody who's left at the table, and before when people bust out, there's hugging. Oh, GG, everybody is happy, but she just kind of turns around and nobody says anything as she walks up the back of the set, and you can see Jungle actually go after her, which was great of Jungle, by the way, to do that to say goodbye, but that was kind of awkward.
So totally, normally when you bust from a tournament, it's like, oh, I had 9s and he had ace queen and whatever, like, and you say shake hands, go around the table, but Fedor's still reeling. Like Fedor is like still processing all this stuff in her head. Maria has just been like, give me all the chips. She's super stoked. Yeah. Jungle's processing the hand too. Everybody's sort of this, and just poor Kyna, who, as you mentioned, had to sit there. Pretty much as soon as the flop comes out, she's drawing dead or like 1% or something like that.
Right. When we think of the moment and the gravity of it, the fact that it was the hand of the tournament, she just becomes an afterthought in that moment. And people just sort of forget that, oh, you know what, guys, kind of busted. Let's maybe, say goodbye. But like you said, Fedor's like, oh my God, Maria's in this new chip position. But as you said, Jungle did go out there and say, but yeah, that's what it was. Just an afterthought because it wasn't the most important part of the hand for, the majority of the people, but it was, of course, for Kyna. And I got to tip my hat to her that she didn't give it away, because she has no incentive to like do that, just other than, showing respect to the game.
All right. So with that, we're down to 4-handed, and we have a new chip leader with Maria. She's got almost 2/3 of the chips in play. She's huge. She's got a giant lead in this spot, and this leaves Fedor short. And Jungle finally finishes him off, winning a flip with 9s against ace 10. Daniel, you had a chance to catch up with Fedor and talk about hands, experience on Game of Gold. So why don't we run that now, Ross?
All right. I'm super excited to be joined by the one and only Mr. Fedor Holz. I got to be honest with you. I find to be an excellent coach. I watch a lot of your stuff, and I find like you really think about the game at a high level in a unique way, very aggressive. And, this was an opportunity, I feel like, for people to see kind of a different side of you. Like, you had this backroom vibe with like Josh and Maria. Like what was going on there with that vibe?
It's interesting because I think I realized watching the show, and also some friends telling me, is my friends know me this way, but people who watch me play poker, they've never seen me being that way. Generally, when I'm with my friends, I'm more a bit goofy and cheerful, and when I rail them, I'm also jumping around and like screaming, for cards. But it just never shows on TV when I play poker. So I guess this was one of the first times people, in the public saw me more like this.
So you felt like overall the edit was basically like an accurate depiction? Because some people, when they get on reality TV stuff, they're like, "That's not who I am." I'm like, "Kind of is." So was that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think they showed every time I guessed an action wrong. No, but yeah, I mean, it's obviously a special situation, right? So I would say, hi camera. I would say that it was different in the way of I'm rarely locked in a room for 14 hours and rail people that much without playing, because I think that was for me actually the biggest thing is after day 3 or day 4 I just wanted to play poker, as I watched so much. I think I played like 40 minutes or an hour myself, and I watched like 40 hours. I was just, please give me some poker cards in my hands.
It's funny you say that, because I wanted to have you on like last week or whatever. I said, Fedor, we'll just have you on the next time you play, and you never play, right? You just never got to play.
It was a lot of watching, not so much playing. So because when everyone else is playing, right, and when you don't scoop 3 people, it's not a lot of poker.
Yeah. So going back, to one of the earlier episodes, so what was your thought process? Because I think some people were a little bit surprised that you chose Maria so early. Then you ended up with Josh. What was your thought process in terms of picking her, and then of course him at the end there?
It was actually interesting. A few people asked me about this randomly, and I thought that Maria was, in my mind, she was very clearly the pick to take for a few different reasons. And I don't think I tanked for too long. I obviously thought about my picking order. But you have to remember also, at that time, it wasn't clear what game we're playing. It wasn't clear, you're going to play, this heads-up sit-and-go match. But there's a few different angles for me here. One is the playing skill, which I think I think she was actually one of the stronger ones of the bunch left. In terms of, let's imagine all the different types of game that we could play. Maybe it's just a random game, or maybe it has something to do with poker. I really like that. Also, one thing to keep in mind there is we watched all the sit and go action before, and I just quite liked how she played there. And to be honest, I didn't like how some other people played. So I was more like, okay, I know how she plays, so I'm happy to have her on my team skill-wise. But actually, there's other things that come in. And one thing is, I know her for a long time. I like her. We understand each other well. So I thought those were some bonus points of just whatever situation comes up, we'll be able to figure it out. And I also thought there's one aspect I didn't proactively think about too much, but also thought in terms of media, how I want to come across. I thought that with her, I'd be the most natural and just, have the best time. So I just thought it would be the most enjoyable experience for me as well. So those were the different reasons. And so for me, it was a snap. And also when Josh was still left, I thought this was a massive blunder. I mean, I think he is a great field player, but also I thought he was he's just a reality TV superstar. So I was very happy to have him on my team.
Yeah, no, it definitely came off that way, that you guys had great vibes. And, that's something that maybe not everyone thought about in terms of the fact that, you're going to be in a room with these people. You kind of want to enjoy them and have a good rapport. And that sort of leads me, I mean, again, we're going back, a few episodes, but I sort of never had a chance to ask you these, and I want to know. So now you sit down in one of your first matches in round 2, and you're sitting there with Charlie, right? And you guys had decided, Fedor, you've sort of helped them all, you've taught them a little bit, you've planned them, and you're going to go first. And Charlie it almost like he's calling you out here. Oh, and I don't know. I think Fedor, he took advantage of you guys. Like, what are your thoughts about, how did you respond to that? Like,
I mean, I didn't think that there was a lot of response needed. I mean, I wasn't actually, to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure. I thought about the different factors that matter, but I came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter a lot. So there was a few percent left in me was like, maybe I forgot something. Maybe there's something I didn't think about that actually matters. But I just thought that the only small upside you have is you have a chance to scoop while nobody else makes points. That doesn't happen when you go later. I think in terms of percentage of win of your team, I think it doesn't matter. That's the conclusion I came to. It doesn't matter percentage-wise for your team if you go first, second, or third. My big thing was I just wanted to. I was the captain. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to go out there. And I also kind of later it was a bit interesting because Maria and Josh, I think I kind of thought that it would be awkward that I will think that I want to go first in both matches. But I actually kind of thought, I go first now, and then I'll probably go second or third after. And to be very frank, probably the strategically best would have been if we try to only optimize for win percentage. Probably it's best if I go second both times because I have time to watch a person play, and I'd probably be the best at exploiting if I see 1 or 2 games being played. But I thought it would not matter a lot. So when he said it, I didn't feel like there was a big response needed. It was just like, I thought he just said it to get under our skin, and I don't think I responded a lot, but it's also, the way they show it also sometimes can be a bit misleading. So
for sure. Yeah. Well, there's one scene that I looked at and I thought, wow, I thought you came across really, really well in this. And it's in the back room, you're going into the next round now. And Maria's sort of explaining why she wants to go first. And you're like, yeah, you can go first. And she's like, no, really, I want to make sure. And you're like, no, really, it's fine. You go first. And it felt like you guys really did have sort of a team camaraderie here in the idea that you have went first once already. Josh already picked up some coins. So this is giving her a chance. And there was kind of I don't know, it felt like a nice moment there between, 2 friends there.
Yeah, I mean, I also see it that way. It's of course, went there to win. But I also, and I think we've been around poker players long enough. I'm very competitive in that sense. I don't want to, just you go first, But in that sense, it's more, I don't think the EV difference is massive. And I think also, you don't know what happens afterwards, right? You don't know what games you're going to play. You don't know what the next round is going to be. So I just thought in spots where, it's not necessary to fight or compete. I thought it would be better for my, both my personal fun, but also my overall chances if I just, if I just stick to my values and what I think is right. And in the sense, I think she was very conscious about it, she didn't want to ask for something that then is weird, that she was no, it was clear for me that it's fine that she can go first.
Yeah, you bring up some good points too in terms of you don't know what you're going to do. As for example, with the sort of variable where they threw at people were Charlie's yeah, I'm going to pick jungle. Oh, wait, I have to play against him, right? So you're not really sure, going forward what's going to happen. So I kind of wanted to fast forward now a little bit more to the final table, because you had a situation where it looked like Fedor was going to, cruise to the victory here. And there was a couple things. First, Adam in one of the previous podcasts mentioned, you're the German robot. And I was like, no, absolutely not. That is not Fedor. Fedor is a guy who's looking to pick up reads and all these kind of things. And there's one specific hand, and I was just curious about this one. It's raised called, and you have aces, right? And you're staring down the opener. You're staring down Maria. It's you have aces. Are you actually looking for something here, or is this just for balance? Because in some spots you are going to need to try to get reads.
One big thing about my demeanor, it doesn't, when I rewatch myself, that's often not how I felt in the moment. Sometimes I look at myself and oh wow, this looks, intense or mean, whereas I'm actually in a totally different world sometimes in game. And I just learned to, I think what you see on the outside is often just a state that I can hold for a very long time, where I can, think and come up with my thoughts without giving away too much. And I think in this particular spot, generally, when I have a very strong hand, my main thoughts are not so much around, I try to intimidate them or I try to pick up something particular. It's more, for example, if I think they're very strong, that will change my strategy drastically. If I think there's basically, their range is jacks plus ace king, and I think there's basically never a bluff in their range. They don't find any king queen suited or ace 10 suited or ace 10 off or whatever. I just be okay. I play aces totally different, of course, because a main reason you sometimes call aces, or you sometimes trap certain hands, or you sometimes induce certain hands. It depends a lot on how likely your opponent is to be bluffing. So that's generally when I look out for reads like that. I just try to get a good feeling for where they're at in their range, because that will lead to a very big strategy shift.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you say it that way, because, obviously if you feel like you can get it in with aces pre-flop, against strong range is great. And if not, maybe you have to find another way to optimize and, get value. There was a couple hands, 2 specific hands from the final that were interesting in terms of, your approach. And one of them, and you break it down, and it's a hand where you turn a flush and it goes bet call, and you have 6-5 of diamonds, and you're just like, meh, I mucked my hand. And in the interview, you sort of, you were quite confident that, your read is right in the situation. And as it turns out, your flush was good at the time. Like, so when you look back and you see the actual result, does that change the confidence you had in your read in the situation?
Generally, I mean, of course, throughout my career, I made countless of wrong assumptions and plays and reads. I generally try to be very precise with what I saw and what I interpreted, because I think there's a big difference. And my biggest the biggest thing I try to eradicate is that I try to talk myself into stuff that I emotionally want to sabotage myself. For example, I justify things, just to beat this guy, or just to be in this pot, or just to not fold this hand, or that will happen. And that's what I try to work a lot on, is to not do that, to not talk myself, I have 2 pair, I'm too high up in my range, but I'm actually kind of come to a totally different conclusion. I rather want to fold my hand, for example. And what I try to do is, generally, when I fold my hand, my rule of thumb is I'm generally fine when I fold, because I believe that my tendency is to be slightly too sticky. So I don't hate myself too much if I find, like, if I pick up certain reads where I think, okay, they're strong, or, I think I should be folding my hand. Normally, if I sense a certain type of strength, what's interesting, sometimes what I see is people just give away certain information. But let's say they have 2 pair, or they have top pair or something. They think they have a good hand, for example, and then I interpret that wrongly and think, like, now I'm beat, or I interpret the range in a certain way that I think, okay, against this type of range, I probably should fold my hand in a multi-way pot where it goes bet call. In this particular one, I just think when I sense, like, okay, I think I sense some strength, and given this action, I don't think my hand is very good to continue if I think that one range is leaning much more towards being on the strong end, and sometimes I'm wrong.
It's funny you bring this up, because you were one of the few to sort of defend Andy. Remember way back in some earlier episodes where, like, Josh is value betting. He's clearly strong in terms of his eyes, and Andy makes the fold, and everyone's like, what are you doing? David can't help himself. But so that's similar to what you're saying, in a sense, like, the read is correct.
I mean, one thing that I learned, my biggest takeaway from this show, I have to say, is when you talk, you sit in a room, you talk for 12 hours a day, or, let's say half of the time you're talking something. When you try to actually not think about how it's being used, there's a lot of wrong stuff or dumb stuff you're saying. And one thing that actually tilts me a little bit watching it now is, I feel like watching it, everyone was just screaming the result. When the guy hit a good hand, it's like, call, fold. Or when he had a bad hand, it's like, of course, you have to call here. And I'm watching, and I'm just like, no, he bets quarter pot. You're not folding, So it's because it kind of, when it's cut together, and it goes so quick, it just feels like, there's this guy, he just seems to know all the time what's right. Yeah, because he sees the cuts. Like, of course, of course it's right. So I think that in those spots, I think that it was the ace-3 hand, I think, was poorly executed by Andy, just because, even if you pick up strength, I still think that you can't fold it. But the king-9, for example, I think this is a hand that can definitely be folded sometimes. You have one of the worst bluff catchers, and in a polarized spot where if you think the other guy's strong, and you're fairly good at this, or are fairly confident, then I think it's fine to fold. But of course, that needs to be there. yeah, against someone where you haven't really played against him, that's the thing I didn't understand. I think in retrospect is, when he says like, "Oh, I've never really played against a guy," then maybe don't. Then I wouldn't make too drastic of adjustments. But I think the whole just blaming people for making wrong or right decisions based on results. I think. He had a read. He was right both times. He adjusted poorly.
I think there's a lot of lessons from what you're saying in terms of just being results oriented, because you're right. At the very, beginner level, people look at like, oh, I folded queen 8 and flop was queen 8. That's the very basic. But it's interesting to see, even throughout the show with a bunch of professionals who should all know better, right? We're still doing this in these situations, like looking at, the results. And I want to look back at one more hand. Obviously, this was kind of the big one for you here. This is the one where, you were chip leader. You were on your way to Game of Gold champion, and you run into a spot where, you pick up the queens, kind of moves all in, she's short, and now Maria flats from the small, and you're both pretty deep. And you elect to not 4-bet here. And I was curious, like, what was going through your head there about, why you decided to just, call?
Yeah, I think I blundered the spot. This was like, I don't remember exactly what I thought. Also, it's been too long. But looking at it as well, it's like I'm not very happy with how I played that spot. But I also wasn't happy during playing it. Sometimes it's just there are these hands where I had a certain thought process. I thought she would be pretty tight in that spot. Like I don't think she's the type of player to find like any close hands in this one, which is also not something that I think is bad. It's just. My assumption was that it's going to be a pretty tight range. And now I think the tricky part begins where, if I think it's something like, let's say 10s plus ace king, or if I think it's something like jacks plus ace king, like how often does she flat? How often does she 4-bet? Like is she flatting kings? Is she flatting ace king? Like flatting jacks? Is she ever flatting 10s? Like so this was going through my head at the time. And I came to the conclusion that I was not confident enough to say, oh, this is like jacks, ace, king, or, jacks through queens, ace, king. And I thought if I think, I don't remember the stack sizes entirely, but I thought like I didn't want to get it in. And I thought that I would be able to play a rather straightforward post-flop hand where I don't want to get it in. And I think if I don't, I think I'm still in a pretty decent position. My equity is very rarely being bluffed out. Like I let her realize, but also I don't feel like it's terrible to let her realize that type of equity. I don't think I get her to fold ace king. So it's more like, do I get it in against jacks? Probably not. So it's like, okay, I fold out some equity, but also I'm basically of course if I get it in against jacks, I don't think she's the type of player though to get in jacks there for. Do you remember how many big blinds it was?
I don't remember the exact. But
yeah,
you guys.
I remember it was pretty. Quite.
Yeah,
low.
you guys relatively deep.
So yeah, that was. I think now trying to recollect what I thought in the spot. So I decided to flat, and then shit happened.
Well, the shit that happened, like, and you sort of mentioned it, you thought like maybe your flop size was a little too small. But the most interesting part to me was now you get screwed. You flop top set on a queen jack 8 board, I believe, with 3 diamonds. And then like the 10 rolls off on the river, like literally your worst card. And now she leads this card and you go into a really long tank. You take, it looks like you're using all your gold coins, maybe 3 full minutes or so. And a couple of the hands, you're thinking she might have like, one combo of ace queen, and you're going through all the potential bluffs, and you finally make this call. What ultimately swayed you to make the call rather than fold there?
It's basically the thing is she has to continue ace king on the flop. So I was basically just going through combos. I think in hindsight it's just bad. That's the thing that annoyed me about the hand. But it's like the reason why I think it's bad, she has to turn certain type of hands into a bluff. I think the odds I got were pretty ridiculous. It was a pretty small size in river, like massive pot. So it's basically, okay, I have to see a bluff like, I don't know, it's like 15, 20% of the time or something. So I just thought, what is she thinking if she gets there with one combo of ace queen suited, for example? What is she thinking? Like, does she get it to showdown? Is she bluffing? Like, I think she probably will choose to bluff this hand. Maybe she doesn't, but like, I felt like if she gets there with ace queen suited, I think she understands. Like, oh, there's a lot of hands that are better than mine, and she might go at it. So this is basically, I'm just sitting there in agony. Of course, I know value range is very thin. There's not very many hands that she can have for value. It's basically like a few combos of ace king. And I think I just made a poor decision. I think fold is the right play. I think there are not enough hands that she can turn into a bluff. And I think the ratio will probably be, if at all, something like 10 value to 1 bluff or something. And it might be just 0. So I think it's a bad call.
Yeah, it's interesting because earlier, in several of the episodes, you mentioned, and I thought it was very fair in the way that you described it. You said that Maria was essentially, when there was a spot to take a passive line, she was typically taking the passive line and the passive route. So in this case, like, with ace queen, which is pretty much the bluff, the only one that she's really going to have there. The question is, is she going to see that maybe she has some showdown value, or will she actually bluff this based on, what you'd see? Maybe she's like reversing. So it's one of those tough spots you look back at and in hindsight, you think that you're probably supposed to fold. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought another kind of problem I had with this one is I just thought, it's also hard to find value bets. It's not easy to find hands to value bet with on the river. So, I think that was a big part is generally, when in these spots where it's just very limited amount of combos that you can have. So I just thought if basically I think my anchor was if she has that ace queen, the Jack 8 offer, whatever she had, where 3-way she bluffed. It's like she can do it. I just think she's not the type of person to like
overdo it.
Find aggression all the time and like try to win every pot. She picks her spots carefully. So I didn't feel like it's just, I know that like she will give up here. I thought if she gets there, she probably will do it. But now in hindsight, I think it was a little too ambitious.
Yeah. So as it turns out, you don't win, but like overall, like the experience, like, was it what you expected? What did you expect going in? And how was it fun?
I mean, I didn't expect. I probably expected something, but I don't know. I have a few things. I think I was hoping for. I didn't really expect stuff, but I was hoping for non-poker games. I would have loved to play the Indian poker. Like, watching this one, it was hilarious and brutal at the same time. Where this would have been, this was the main thing. Like, I thought when they came, I was like, hey, we're going to run a game show, it's going to be about stuff also, poker related, but not too poker. I thought, oh, amazing. We're going to play new games. There's going to be, more intrigue, like kind of, I love Werewolf. So with our group of friends, we play Werewolf all the time. And I was hoping for something more dynamic in that regard. I liked it the way it turned out, but it was very poker related. So I think I hoped for the Indian poker type of stuff.
That angle for sure. Some little twists and things like that. I think maybe for season 1, right? You're sort of like trying to have proof of concept, make sure this works.
It makes so much sense. They did they took such good care of us, and I really have to say the idea to put us in rooms. I think they should have done that to more extreme even. That was the best. Let us commentate.
Way. Like, what do you mean?
I think there were 2 days where the others played and we weren't there. I think, just let people sit there and watch, because it's so great to get the commentary of other people watching someone's game and so on. That for me was the best part. Is you forget the cameras are there after 5-6 hours. Like, I know I'm not the guy to hate on people. I know myself well in that regard, but it's just funny to see what you say after 6 hours in a room with lots of cameras pointed at you.
Yeah, no question about it. So and obviously in the last episode, there is nobody left in the back room, so it's just like all poker. It's a different vibe, but it seems like the poker community's enjoyed it. So if there is a season 2, You know, are you going to throw your hat in the ring? Would you sign? You're in. Absolutely.
100%. I have to say, I really think there's going to be so many people who want to take part in this.
Have you had people reach out to you and say they want to be on season 2? Because I've had a long list already.
Oh, yeah. So many people love this type of show and exposure, and they would love to be in, a content format like this. So I think there will be hundreds of applicants. So I would definitely be in to go on a second season, but I think it will be tough competition.
Well, listen, I hope that if there is a season 2 that I don't get stuck with bums like Jason Kuhn and Soriza.
It was just unreal. Literally, I think my main thought was just, how can they be out after? I couldn't believe it. I thought, okay, the last sit and go was like, then they'd be like, ta-da, the losers are the winners, and like Daniel come. No, it's like they didn't. It was all real.
Was clearly not rigged for sure. Anyway, thanks, Fedor, for joining us. It was a blast. Your teammate ended up going on to victory, so I'm sure there's a little bit of happiness with that. Even though it couldn't be you. But thanks again for joining us, and maybe we'll see you in season 2.
Cheers. Thanks, Daniel.
All right. Thanks to Fedor for joining us and talking through some of the hands. By the way, I loved in his exit interview when he talks and he's happy Fedor like he always is, and then he's like, "Tonight we party." which was awesome. I love that. All right, with him gone, we're down to 3. Maria way out in front now, but it's winner take all. So how does this change things, guys, as opposed to regular game where there's prizes for as you go up? This is all in first. We don't see tournaments like this at all where ICM isn't a factor.
Well, I think it's easier for Jungle and Yo. I mean, that's the main thing. Maria can't abuse them for a second place pay jump. So that would be the main thing. Jungle and Yo are sort of just free to make plus chip EV, as they say, decisions. I think that's the main thing. Maria has to be cognizant that, like, yes, I'm the chip leader, but I don't just get to rampage on these guys, not just because of the ICM thing, but also because we're still fairly deep. And it's nice to be like, when you're a chip leader at a regular tournament and these guys have like 15 big blinds and you have like 70, you're just like, all in, fuck you guys. You can't do anything about it. And she knows that's not the situation here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So she, generally speaking, having a big stack is worth a lot, right? It's worth significantly less when there is no pressure on these 2 other guys. And we're going to talk about a hand where, that shows up, where, if there was an ICM situation, would, Jovaro would fold, but he doesn't. But yeah, I think overall that mindset of like, I'm the chip leader, I got to push people around, got to throw that out the window. And she also has to just play for chip EV for the most part, in a sense, like protect her stack, because they're not handcuffed in this situation.
Yeah. All right, so Jovaro's on the short stack. Action to him in the big blind is Maria opens. Jungle 3 bets with Queen 10 suited to 580. And Jovaro only has $1 million back. And A6 suited, no fold equity here at all. And he elects to 4-bet jam here. Jungle, who sees this after they get it all in, he jumps out of his chair and pulls the helmet. No leprechaun accent this time. And basically is just like, what the fuck? And Jovaro's like, because it's winner take all, bro. And true Helmuthian fashion, Danny McFanny says, what do you think I'm raising with? Followed by, you think I'm just light all the time? He's wearing his leprechaun suit, but he looks like full helmet in this spot. Did you guys get a kick out of Jungle's reaction there?
I've never been berated by a leprechaun before, but it would have
been berated by Helmuth, just not.
I have been berated by Helmuth, but if he was not wearing a leprechaun suit, I get it. I mean, I'm never the guy who says like, oh, why did you shove or call with such a crappy hand? Because that's just not my style. But I get it. That I get the surprise because I think I hate this play from Yo. It's only like 22 big blinds, and yes, it's winner take all. But Jungle's 100% pot committed. He's not really much of a favorite, if at all, against Jungle's 3-bet range. Plus, Maria could just wake up with a hand. Like, we saw this in the Kyna Fedor Maria 3-way. Like, she could just, okay, I just opened with 2 kings, and now you're shoving into me. Great. Like Jungle's upset. It's a bit of a results-oriented upset. But one of the things is his range is going to contain a lot of dominating hands here. If Jungle has ace 10, he's certainly not unhappy. If he has pocket jacks, pocket nines, whatever, all of this stuff that dominates Yo, he's not unhappy. He's just unhappy because this time he had queen 10 suited. Joviral is an ace, and he's a tiny bit of a dog. But yeah, Jungle losing is cool just for a moment there. But I did not like the jam from Yo at all.
Yeah, I'm going to totally disagree with you on this. And I actually think Joviral's analysis on this was really well thought out, right? He correctly assessed that Jungle's going to be 3-betting from the small with a lot of suited combos, right? It is a winner-take-all format. He blocks all the, when you have an ace in your hand, there's less ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, ace, 10 type hands. And because it's winner-take-all, there's no value in waiting people out. So now, because there's so much dead money in there already, you got Maria's raise, you've got the big blind ante. Again, he doesn't have fold equity here, but if he feels like he can get it in this spot, maybe like even with 45%-ish or 45% overall, like it's not bad because now you got chips to play with, right? It's just such a unique format when there's no second or third. So I kind of like him sort of respecting Jungle's really good. Maria's really good. I'm not going to like outmaneuver him with 20 bigs. I'm going to gamble and I'm going to take my shot here and, hope that Jungle, who's going to have a wide 3-betting range here, I think, has a hand like he does.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I did say the same thing about Kyna's reshove earlier, so that's fair. It just seemed like it seemed to me like the math wasn't there, but it could be, like you said, if he's 45%, then it's a plus EV shove.
It's 3-handed and you got a suited ace. Like, it's fine,
Yeah.
Jungle again, he's got the queen 10 of clubs and he flops the World's Fair. It comes king jack 5 with 2 clubs, giving him open-ended straight draw, flush draw, and even if he hits a pair, it's good. Joviral can't look. I think Jungle is a favorite after the flop, and Joviral realizes this, and he kind of hides behind Jungle and looks the other way, away from the table. He doesn't want to see the pain come off the deck. And he just wants to know if he's drawing dead. And the turn's a 10. So Jungle makes a 10. And Joviral says, tell me if I'm drawing dead. And Jungle says, no, but you're in pretty bad shape. And then Joviral asks Maria before the river comes off, or after the river comes off, he says, Maria, tell me if I win or lose. Maria, of course, being the nice person she is, does her best to give him the bad news in a sympathetic tone, saying, you lost.
Imagine if they gave that seat to Sean Deeb.
Show
me like you hit it.
Oh my God, you hit the ace like that. So you can turn around and feel double pain.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. So with Joviral out, it's now heads up. And Maria, who has crushed through the entire competition, she holds the lead over Danny McFaney at this point. And we noticed that Maria is back to talking to Jungle, right? She remember in the past when they were playing heads up, she started talking to him, and it was this sort of flirty stuff back and forth. This has got to be calculated on Maria's end at this point, right?
So I wasn't sure. So I texted Maria. She said 1,000% intentional is what she told me. She told me that it worked real well the first time that they played heads up. The plan was to go in and create like a relaxed mood. She knows that he's obviously like a great player. And so anything that maybe took him out of his comfort zone, maybe disarmed him a little bit so that he's not out hunting for blood, would potentially be to our advantage. Now, Daniel's mentioned that Jungle's, a high stakes reg. He's not going to be easily duped in this mind game. But I understand where Maria's going with. Maria said, yeah, that's what I was going with. Like, I'm skill for skill. Maybe I'm not here with this guy, but maybe let's get in his head a little, make him talk. Maybe he'll make some mistakes.
Yeah, listen, it's clear. It's blatantly obvious. You just don't see her doing this with anybody else. All of a sudden, Jungle, and she's running her mouth like crazy. I didn't even have to text Maria. Oh, it was 1,000%. I was sure just based on looking at it. And that makes some sense too. Like, Jungle's a killer, right? So in her mind, she thinks Jungle's probably even better when he's dialed in, focused on just what's happening, rather than talking about his virginity and focusing on Danny McFaney and all the other pop and circumstance, right? Whatever she can do to get him off of thinking about the game, she feels like, gives her an advantage. And it was just so obvious to me. And in the end, I don't know if it worked because I really don't think Jungle's easily rattled. But in the end, she ends up with all the chips and the trophies. So.
I'm feeling a bit like Kyna when she busted out because even if I wanted to text Maria, I couldn't. I don't have her number. You guys just, no problem. You can just pick up the phone.
I asked if you could have it, and she said no. Just so.
All right, so we have a lengthy heads-up battle here now that goes on between Maria and Jungle. Jungle, obviously considered one of the best heads-up players of all time, so she's in it here, right? Some really high-level stuff goes down, and let's just quickly touch on a few of them. The first pot, we see Jungle check back the 6-4 off on the Queen 8-5 flop. Maria has 7-9, so she's got the bigger gut shot draw to the smaller gut shot draw of Jungle. Turn is a 10, and Maria leads with her straight draw. And Jungle senses weakness here, and he puts in a healthy raise, forcing Maria to fold her draw. The next hand we see, Maria tries a turn bluff raise of her own. Similar line, she checks back Jack 6 on the 5-7-8 flop. The turn is a 5. Jungle bets big with Queen 6, so the bigger straight draw. Queen kicker, about 2/3 of the pot to 450,000. Maria makes it 1.2 million, and Jungle calls. And the river's another 5, and Maria doesn't go for it. She takes the passive line, giving up, and she's a little disgusted when Jungle rolls over the Queen 6 to her Jack 6. And she says, what a terrible run out. What's happening in this hand, guys? My mind was blown again here.
Well, both of these hands, demonstrate sort of a fundamental idea about no limit hold'em is when both people have nothing, the aggressive person wins. And then that's just a truth about no limit hold'em, especially heads up. I understand what she's doing here. The 5 doesn't seem like a good bluff card. I mean, your Jungle's going to have a real hard time folding a pair there. You already beat 9-10. So if you check it back with 9-10, your Jack high is going to beat the 10 high. 6 not super likely because you have a 6 yourself. So I understand Maria giving up here, but if it's like, another card on the river, if it's like a king on the river or something, I could see Maria finding this barrel for sure.
Yeah, I definitely, with Maria's spot, I really like the turn raise. It makes a lot of sense after check back flop. You can have a lot of 5x or whatever. The thing about it though is when you do this on the turn, like you have to follow it, you have to couple it with a river bet, except when the board comes like really, really bad. Because what happens is, she's repping a 5 on the turn or straight or something like that. And now, she doesn't have 8-8 or 7-7 and doesn't have like ace-ace or king-king, right? So that 5 really screws her because it sort of cuts in half the value she could have, right? Because there's only one 5 left that she's trying to say that she has, right? For me, what was interesting, she elects to check it back. And I think that's a good play considering what came out. What was interesting for me is Jungle calling this turn. Like, what was the plan here? Right? Just call, hope the queen high is good, hope you're up against Jack 9, 9, 10. There's some stuff there. Also maybe calling because you think, you can catch a queen and the straight draw is good, but obviously not just calling to draw. He's calling because he thinks he has the best hand. The question is, if it did come like king on the river, was he just check folding? I think he was. And part of why I think he was is, again, part of what we see with Maria is a lot of stabs on flop and turn with some bluffs, but often, it's very Helmuthian, frankly. A lot of these like take a stab, give up on the river type stuff. So I think that makes her turn raise a little more difficult because Jungle's like, no, I'm going to call this turn, but do you have the cojones to fire another shell? I think she would have fired another shell, but the 5 just you can see her disgust. She's like, nice runner. Because when she says that tells you that she had planned on bluffing that river.
Right.
So after these hands, we see Jungle is inching closer to even in chips. Next hand is another give up for Maria. She bluffs at the turn with a flush draw. And again, Jungle calling with queen high, this time queen jack on the ace 10, 3 deuce, 2 heart board. The river pairs the ace, but Maria elects to take the passive line again. And Jungle bluffs at it with the best hand. Then we see another bluff from Jungle, ace, king, deuce, with 2 clubs in the flop. He check calls with the Robbie Lou. He's got Jack 4 off with the 4 of clubs. The turn is a 3, giving Maria a pair with her 8-3 off on the button and elects to check it back. River's a queen. Jungle now blocks both straights. He blocks Jack 10 and the 4-5. And he goes huge. He bets 890K into 1.1 million. And to her credit, Maria really feels like something's off here. Tanked for a long time and finally folds. And she says, that one felt like a bluff, Jungle. And he's like, then call. And he goes into a leprechaun thing about something about calling or getting the chips in. But based on these edits with these hands, they're trying to, and I'm sure this is probably what happened, but this is Jungle just taking advantage of his experience and his ability here. Heads up, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, hey, nobody went into the show thinking if Jungle gets heads up in a no limit hold'em format that he's not going to be a super tough customer. I think everybody on the planet knows that. I was surprised at the appeal with the Jack 4 there for sure, but then he actually gets the good run out. I mean, we got both ends of it, blocking the nuts, and that's a great bluff spot there. I noticed a lot of Jungle checking back the turn in positions and doing it with a much higher frequency than I think most people would, and also putting Maria in a tough spot where, Maria is, he thinks that maybe she's going to barrel a little bit too light, and he's going to be able to take advantage of that in position or raise her a little thin. We see a lot of hands that sort of like that, where it's like, okay, let's skip to the turn. Like, check in position, a lot of times with just enough equity to make things difficult for Maria. That was one of the things I noticed, is he was checking back so many more flops than most people do, and that we've seen most people do throughout this entire show, and actually making it really difficult for Maria to play with this protected check back range.
I'll tell you what I see here, right? Like, as you're watching this match, if you don't know the outcome, it looks like just Jungle's just going to dominate here. Like, you see the talent. You see why he's a high stakes player. You see him in the trenches fighting for all these pots that most people don't. Most people don't peel with Jack 4 on Ace King Deuce. And when they do so without a really good idea what the hell they're going to do. Not Jungle. Jungle sees all these spots, the Queen 6 off, the 4-6 off, bluff raise. Like, he recognizes situations and he pounces. It's like, I don't envy Maria's position here, right? Maria's there and Maria's got a game plan of her own. But if you watched up to here, you think, man, if they played, 25,000 hands, and I imagine Maria would agree with this, you can feel how, like, okay, well, Jungle's going to win the money because Jungle's going to redline, right? And, for those that don't know what redline means, that means like win money without showdown. And like when it comes to the red line, Jungle's crushing, right? And that's what we see here. Two sort of little, like, different styles, where we talked about this a bunch. Maria taking the passive line a lot of roads. Jungle, doing both. Like in some spots, like you said, he's checking back flops. That's passive. But then in other spots, he's playing uber aggressive and really going for it. Despite having the image of like a mad bluffer, he still finds the spots that are right to do it. Like, it's just like watching an absolute animal here. And as I was watching this, I'm like, wow, you get that sense, and like, no disrespect to Maria, of course. She's not spent the time that Jungle has in heads up. But, as a fan or whatever, you watch that and you think like, all right, well, shit, he's fucking tough to beat. And even Fedor said it too in one of the interviews. He's like, this guy's no joke. Like, he's that good.
And yet, after all that, we see Jungle do something that made me go, what the heck just happened? He calls a big bet on the river with King high on the 10-9 3-8 queen board when Maria has a straight. And I'm thinking, okay, he blocks King Jack. It's a one-liner here with the Jack for a straight. He blocks one combination of a Jack, but still, what do you beat here? Like, I just didn't understand this call at all.
Yeah, you block King Jack, which is why you would raise. I didn't understand this at all. I'm going to let Daniel handle this one because I just thought, like, Maria has bluffs that you can't beat here, I think.
Yeah, that's what I think he thinks is like not right. So I think in his mind, he thinks she's checking back ace high for value, maybe has like a slightly better king high. I think he's probably like delving into psychology a little bit, understanding situations. It's a line that's over bluffed often when it goes check, check, flop, check, check, turn, bluff, bet river. Like, she's claiming really here like a Jack or 2 pair or better. So if he doesn't have that, like, maybe she has, the hands that, at the bottom of her range, like just some random, like, because remember, we're heads up now. So 7 deuce, 7-4, 7-5, like, all these hands, but I still can't believe
There's
it.
still not
like,
that many of them, even when you go say,
like, if she has king high, you like chop, right? So what do you beat here? You don't beat any Jack X. You literally beat, I couldn't believe this call. You beat 7 high and you chop with king highs. That call, and it wasn't even small sizing too, right? So that one was like, I don't know, man. That seemed like
he leveled himself.
Maybe she was bluffed and said king 7 high. Like, you lose anyway.
Is this because she's so tight that she'll never bet 2 pair in this spot? It's a Jack.
Well, I think she's got 2 pair there. I think she's certainly got 2 pair and all that sort of thing. But I think what he thinks is, agreeing with you, Adams, that her value range is limited to 2 pair or straights, nothing else for value. right? So if that's the only value range, he thinks he's getting the right price. I think this is a mistake, flat out.
But that means like even if all he has is two pairs and even if all Maria has, is two pairs and straights, like that relies on Maria to just bluff all of these 7 highs and 6 highs and 5 highs, which probably,
like I said, in the end, I mean, I look at this hand and I'm like, that's just way too ambitious a call.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't have a very good bluff catcher. Frankly, I don't think blocking the king jack matters much here. I mean, any jack's a jack. You don't block a jack, right? Which is the key card on this board. So the king is like, actually, the king doesn't block it, because if she has king jack here, the size probably goes even bigger, targeting a jack or smaller, whatever the case may be. But in the end, like, I mean, it's just so thin. Like, you just lose so often by accident here when you call here with king 5.
It's like, oops, I have deuces.
Yeah, you win. I have deuces. Right.
All right. Then we see another bluff from Jungle on the board of ace 8, 9, ace 8. Maria value bets a 9, and Jungle raises with a king. So, it's tough to play against a guy like this who can just find these bluffs. Really high level stuff. Even, having said what we said about that one hand, he's not a robot, but man, he can put you in some really, really brutal spots. And he gets back to even here as they both have 11 million at 80,000, 160,000 blinds. And despite Jungle kind of seemingly in control of the match, it's Maria who ends up with all the chips when Jungle turns a pair into a bluff, and Maria makes the relatively easy call with the second nut flush on the river. Gold confetti, there's sort of this solemn moment between the two. It wasn't like, when Chris Moneymaker wins the main event of the final table, woohoo, they're high five. There's nobody to high five. And Maria, being the person she is, feels bad for Jungle and doesn't want to celebrate her win or anything like that. But we get the confetti, and she is the champion of season 1 of the Game of Gold. And we've talked a lot about Jungle in this hand, or in this episode and throughout. But let's talk about Maria, the winner. Her performance all the way through, from episode 1 all the way through episode 12 here. It's tough to find a mistake that she made.
Yeah, and I'll say another thing. I'm going to use the worst cliche in poker that we all hate is but what a great ambassador for poker that she is. And I know everybody hates that cliche, but she was a class act all the way through, a team player.
She is a drunken F-bomber this whole season.
Let's forget the first 2 episodes where she couldn't stop swearing.
That's good by me. Listen, authenticity.
Yeah, that's true. You did. It's been a while, Daniel. It's been a few weeks since F-bomb Maria.
All class up.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I mean, obviously, she got to show her colorful side, but also her classy side. So, obviously, super deserving winner. Does anybody say she's absolutely the best no limit hold'em player out of the 16 people? No, but that doesn't matter. She played the game. She played it well. She did it in a way where she respected her teams. She respected the other players. I have a prediction for season 2. My prediction for season 2, and I don't know who's going to be on it, and I don't think you even do, Daniel, but I think people are going to be a little more cutthroat in season 2. Now that we see we've seen the team dynamic and how it can kind of affect everybody, and for all these guys who forgot that they're also supposed to be harnessing their gold coins, and we saw Yo Viral scoop up the 90 coins, which was super instrumental in him making a deep run. I think we're going to see a lot more cutthroat activity. So what I really loved about season 1 is that, one of the good guys, one of the good girls won by just being a solid team player. And to that effect, to most people on the show were just real good team players. So hats off to Maria. Big congrats to her. And it's great for poker. Again, I'm going to bring out all the cliches. Good for poker that Maria is the champion of season 1.
Yeah. So before I get to the Maria stuff, that last hand I thought was kind of interesting too, in that she had king 8. I wonder if she had the 8 of clubs if she makes that call.
Yeah.
Because Jungle,
she thought about it for a little bit.
Online with the second nuts, and you just can't fold the second nuts to Jungle, the guy who's finding all these bluffs. So she does make the call and win. And I think one of the things we saw on display with Maria is giving herself a chance to win, finding ways to win, understanding her strengths and weaknesses, playing her game, right? So a lot of people critique hands. I'm like, oh, she should be bluffing here. She's bluffing. But she knows how people perceive her game better than everybody else. So earlier in the episodes, Fedor was mentioning some spots where he's like, no, she's got a bluff here. Maybe you do. Maybe you got a value bet here, but she's a different animal. She knows how people perceive her. She's been in the game a very long time, highly successful and not just Hold'em, but a wide variety of games. So for her to come out on here, play various formats, didn't have to play the Indian poker, so we didn't get to see her chops there. But, heads up, she crushed it. She was able to maneuver well at the final table. And I think the one thing that you look at as a common thread throughout is she didn't find herself in a bunch of tough spots because of the way in which she played. But in addition to that, when she did, she chose to take them very seriously by using her gold coins. I think that's another thing you might see in future seasons where people are like, you know what, I need more time, so I'm going to actually use these coins. Because every time she used the coins, pretty much, I think every time, she ended up making the right decision, and maybe she wouldn't have had she not. So hats off to Maria, as you said. It felt like she was one of those, some people maybe, I don't know, went into it like whatever, but she tried really hard. You could see it. You could sense it. You could feel it. She was giving it her A game in every hand, every moment, focus, paying attention. Came with, psychology too, with the whole jungle stuff, the chit chat. She was planning this thing out from the get-go. Another reality TV alum from The Amazing Race and stuff like that. So she understood what to do going in. And I think it caps off an amazing season of season one. And I don't disagree with you. I think season two, you're going to have some more tears and some more yelling and screaming.
All right, I have an update, guys. I have Maria Ho's number in my phone, but it's from 15 years ago, so there's a decent chance this is somebody else's number now. All right. What a season it was. Hats off to GG Poker and all the creators behind the scenes at the Game of Gold. And we have a special treat. Daniel was able to catch up with the brains behind the show, Spunky Hwang. So let's cut to that now.
All right, so on the podcast, we got a very special guest. We have a man that we all owe a debt of gratitude to, the man behind Game of Gold, the creator, if you will. And before I get to some questions, I want to first and foremost say on behalf of the entire poker community, thanks for making this show. And my first question is, why did you make it?
Thank you so much. I'm just very happy that the viewers kind of took the show well. The intentions were to make poker super exciting again. GG, as being in GG, it's all about building the game, making the game more interesting, building the market, introducing the game to new people. And that was the biggest objective. And we wanted to take a softer approach when it comes to poker content. And thankfully, it worked out very well, and we're very happy.
Yeah, no question about it. Obviously I was part of it, and I saw how huge of a production it was, like how many cameras, the entire setup. This wasn't like a cheap investment to create the show. So I'm wondering, what was the thought process behind just giving it away for free on, the GG YouTube channel? No paywall, nothing, just anybody can watch it.
So, we put multiple years of planning about a new concept in poker content, and how do we make something that everybody can really love? And the first challenge was who is going to be our target viewers, and we put a lot of study into reality shows and different poker show formats that's already out there, but we kind of realized that most poker content nowadays, they're very similar. So we wanted to make something very different, type of content that could kind of surprise everyone and also very entertaining. So when we came down to the conclusion that it has to be some kind of reality format to kind of introduce new characters and new and poker players to the viewers, reality TV normally costs a lot if you want to do it properly, right? So, but for us, it was more important about getting the proper content out there than what it was going to cost. And we kind of envisioned it this way, and the small aspects here and there, how to make a proper show, and that's how it went.
Yeah. Well, so you spoke a little bit about the format. How did you come up with the format? Was this all you? Did you have a brain trust? How did you create this amazing show?
So, Daniel, I think we spoke about this before, but it was one of the inspirations was when we were doing that other show a few years back, and we were kind of stuck in that back room, and it was you, me, David, Ali, Brent Hanks, and we were just chatting for like 10 hours, talking in the back. And we talked about how we should have a camera in this room and it will be more interesting, because we're having like very general, like real conversations there. And that was one of the factors that got me kind of thinking, to express what's happening in the back rooms. Another thing is like, if you look at the content trend nowadays, I look at myself. So when I'm watching some kind of sport, let's say an NBA game, I like to watch streamers streaming the NBA game and them actually like really talking shit on top of the game, instead of having formal casters and commentators. So I saw myself driven towards that kind of content. So I was kind of thinking, how do I put all of this together? Because poker in the end, it's a very emotional game. Like when you watch poker on TV, you see like there's no emotions because on the table, you're not allowed to show any emotions because it kind of shows weakness from the players. But actually, when someone gets bluffed or when they fold, they're kind of burning inside. And I wanted to figure out a way to kind of express that through other people. And that was the whole team, the team format that we kind of put together.
Yeah, it's good. You already answered it, but my next question was going to be about where you came up with the backroom commentary. And I remembered myself and the guys, and we were just talking shit about the play, and you had your eyes like, oh, no, I think there's something here, right? And so I'm curious, all the people that were involved in the show, we had no idea what we were getting into, right? So like you had to, earn some trust with people to make this trip over to Korea. What were just like some of the bigger challenges in putting together, such a production, with so many people involved?
So I produced a very similar show in Korea with the Korean poker pros, and we had a few steps getting to this point. So we had a few trials in Korea with a minor version, but they were a huge success in Korea. Like everybody in the poker community, literally, it's currently the Bible of when people are getting into poker. And that's how popular it became. So we're very confident coming into the show. So, and also I think it's a little bit of credibility that the Koreans are just generally good at making these type of shows that's been shown here and there. And very lucky, I guess. It took a lot of convincing for a few people, but thankfully everybody was generous enough to come along. It was very hard because the selling point, I can't give up any information, right? I can't tell anyone what it's about. All I had to say was just come. It'll be very exciting, very unique experience, and it's going to be good. That's basically what I said. So we're quite lucky overall.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned some of the other ones. I remember when I did the show and then I watched the Netflix show Physical 100, Korean show. And I'm like, aha, I see the hook. Koreans know how to do reality TV. I'm wondering, obviously this is something that worked in Korea. How have you felt the response has been from the poker community as a whole? Like, it seems to me that, it's been pretty positive.
It's really overwhelming, and I really would love to thank everyone. It's kind of coming out as how we would ideally wanted it to. Meaning like the viewers, it's supposed to give the viewers an experience where they get very invested into these different types of characters, right? Everybody's rooting for someone different. So when you get invested into a certain character, you feel like that person is yourself. So you're really rooting for them and you really feel it. And at the same time, all the characters, they're showing different types of emotions. And the viewer, they feel the exact same emotion like while they're watching. And that was the whole intention, getting that investment involved and that attachment and that engagement. So we were trying to figure out ways on how to express that. And thankfully, it's all about getting the organic response from the players, the participants. If the participants get fully invested and zoned into the show, then I was very confident that the viewers will be able to feel that as well. So it was, we were very lucky in here and there, there were probably a million ways that things could go south since everything is very unknown. But I would say overall we were very lucky, and things turned out very well.
For sure. I think so too. I'm curious, one risk that you took is, you set up the show with the backroom commentary, just the music, no commentator like we're used to. Like you said, you're trying to do something different. But now the final, it's 6 people. There is no back room, right? How did you feel about that sort of risk essentially? Like that is poker on its own, going to be appealing enough to the public?
So basically, I mean, the whole intention of the show, it was to show everyone that poker is really a great game, and poker is also a very emotional game, and it's a very exciting game. And getting to the point of the final table, like everybody, all the viewers, they're going to be invested into some of the characters. They'll be very invested and kind of zoned into watching the game itself. And I wanted to express that just watching poker can actually be very exciting. So the viewers watching the final table, I mean, I hope it's because I don't know how the viewers would really take it, but my intention was that since you're so invested into these players, they can kind of imagine how that player would react in these situations if they were in the back room, but they're kind of keeping their cool on the table because that's what you have to do at the table as a poker player. But so it gets the viewers to kind of imagine how that person would be really feeling inside. And I wanted them to kind of be zoned in as well. I wanted the viewers to feel like they're actually playing on the table and feel out the purity of poker and just enjoy it, enjoy the game of poker. So that was the intention. And I hope the background music kind of helped people getting zoned in to the moment, and hope it turned out well.
Yeah, you're a music guy. You got to give him a raise because he crushes it, with the moments and really building it. And I think it was a home run. And one of the things you touched on, I think is so important is, this isn't just a sit and go, right? It's like you're invested in all these characters who went through team formats or whatever, and it's all on the line and the drama is increased. And ultimately, it's a poker show, right? And that's what we were trying to create with some added variables and shooting in a different way, which leads me to my sort of final question here. I'm getting a lot of people bugging me now, saying, oh my God, I want to be on season 2. First of all, can we expect a season 2? And if so, I mean, what should we expect?
So season 2 is definitely in the stages of planning. It's definitely 100% a go. So that's something that we can confirm. As for what people can expect is that for season 1, it was very important for us that we show poker as a very competitive, serious game. We did not want poker to look like a joke. So, which is why I saw a lot of comments saying like we should have more drama. The producers should kind of press a scenario where there's just more drama, right? But we didn't want to force any drama because poker by itself, it could drive people crazy depending on what kind of card hits the turn of the river. I mean, it's a lot of drama that was going to show organically, and that's what we wanted to kind of express. But for season 2, we have a much better idea on how far we can push these players. Because I mean, you experienced it. Being in the back room for 12 hours, that's not easy on its own. So, but we kind of have a better understanding on how far we can press these people to get to create more interesting situations for the viewers and how much the participants can take. So it's going to be a lot tougher. There's going to be a lot more pressing and more surprises that that everyone can expect for season 2.
Okay, you say that with a devilish grin. He's like, what am I going to create? So, I guess the format would be, I mean, I don't know. It's too early to tell. Format somewhat similar. We're basically like whatever you saw in season 1 doesn't mean that what's going to happen in season 2. Like, is it going to be a similar format? 16 people, same idea, or who knows?
I mean, it's I can't really give away anything, but it's going to be more people for sure. So the format, of course, it's going to have some similarities because we don't want to go too off board, but it's going to be very different at the same time. And we want to show more characters in this industry. There's so many great people. There's so many great personalities. I mean, a lot of the viewers, they see a lot of poker streams here and there. They see a lot of great players that the commentators always talk about, but in the end, like there's no way for the viewers to really understand what kind of people that they are, like, like their personality. It's hard to see that kind of stuff. And we want to show as much as as many characters as possible to everyone, so the game itself grows. So that's our ultimate goal. We want to make poker very interesting, very exciting, and we want to show that there are a lot of great personalities in this industry.
Yeah, so asking for a friend here, but I'm just curious. You said more players. Any chance that some of the people we saw in season 1 maybe get to play season 2 too and have some redemption? Team clubs.
Definitely. We want. That's what the viewers also, I assume that they're gonna want too. Because there's some players that kind of fell off earlier that we were very disappointed in it. But we want to show how the old characters interact with the new people that'll be on board as well, because that could also create a lot of interesting situations for the viewers. So it's definitely on the table.
Okay, well, yeah. So I'm in as long as I don't have to eat like extra spicy kimchi or anything like that, because I can't handle spices. No, but in all seriousness, really, this has been great. I remember when we filmed the show together, I said to people, this is going to be the greatest poker show you've ever seen. It's the greatest one I've ever been involved with. You really hit a home run here. You sort of made poker more fun again, not stealing, but like recreating a genre that sort of, like you said, kind of was cookie cutter, same thing over and over. And it was really great. You got the whole poker world talking. So a debt of gratitude to you, Spunky. Much appreciated, and looking forward to what you bring us in season 2.
Thank you so much. I just want to say, lastly, as GG, we really want to make the game of poker great, and because it's a great game. We just want everyone to see it and experience it. And we're gonna be investing a lot into content, our games, and everything, just to make the game bigger and better, and so everybody has a better experience. So, thank you for having me. It was a great experience, and we're so happy that the show did well, and there's a lot more to come.
All right. Well, appreciate your time, Spunky.
So that's a wrap to season 1. Thanks to Spunky for joining us there. Thanks to all of you out there who joined us on this wild ride through season 1 of the Game of Gold and all these recap episodes. They were a ton of fun to do. We look forward to covering season 2. Excited about the different twists and turns that Spunky is going to throw in there after having gone through it once, right? Because after you do that, I'm sure ideas come to him, things that he would like to do differently. And this show was #GoodForPoker, and I hope it sparks more content by other companies that gets everybody talking and expanding this, rising tide floats all boats kind of idea. For Terrence Chan, Daniel Negreanu, and Roscoe P. Coltrane, our producer extraordinaire, we are out, and we cannot wait for season 2, just like y'all.